I didn't know I had already lost my home until my daughter asked me a question no child should ever have to ask. "Mom, where do we live?" She didn't say it dramatically. She didn't cry. She said it the way kids ask about the weather, curious, careful, like she was testing whether the answer might hurt. We were standing outside a family shelter at 6 in the morning. The sky was still dark enough to pretend the day hadn't started yet. My breath came out in white clouds, and my daughter, Ava, stood beside me wearing 2 different socks because one of them had vanished sometime between the shared bathroom and the donation bin. One sock was pink, covered in faded stars. The other had once been white and had clearly given up on that identity. She noticed me staring. "It's okay," she whispered quickly, like she was trying to protect me. "Different socks are cool now." I smiled because my face knew how to do that even when my heart didn't. "That's a bold fashion statement," I said. "Very independent." She grinned, proud. For half a second, just half, I forgot where we were. Then the shelter door opened behind us, and the cold snapped reality back into place like a slap. We stood outside Street Helen's family shelter. The word family sat above the entrance in neat, friendly letters. It wasn't the word shelter that hurt. It was family, like we were a category, like we were a problem with a label. "The bus will be here in 5 minutes," I said brightly, forcing cheer into my voice like it was a skill I could still access. Ava nodded. She adjusted her backpack, which was almost bigger than her, and looked up at me with that quiet bravery that made me proud and guilty at the same time. Then she asked the second question, "Do I still have to say my address when my teacher asks?" My stomach tightened so fast it felt like I'd swallowed ice. "I don't think she'll ask today," I lied. Ava didn't challenge it. She never did. She just looked down at her shoes, then back up at my face, studying me like she was making sure I hadn't disappeared. "Are we going to move again?" she asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. And that's when the black sedan pulled up to the curb. Not a rideshare, not a taxi, not the kind of car that ever came to this street unless it had taken a wrong turn and immediately regretted it. It stopped smoothly, confidently, like it belonged exactly where it was. The door opened, and out stepped my grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore. I hadn't seen her in over a year. I knew that because my life had been cleanly divided into before, everything collapsed, and after, and she existed firmly in the before. She looked exactly the same. Tailored coat, perfect posture, calm elegance, sharpened by the knowledge that she didn't need to raise her voice to be obeyed. She wasn't cruel. She was efficient. Her eyes landed on me first. Recognition. Confusion. Then they moved to Ava. Something cracked. Not loudly. Just enough to notice if you knew what to look for. Eleanor glanced at the sign above the shelter, then back at me. "Claire?" she said. My name sounded unfamiliar in her mouth, like she hadn't used it recently. "What are you doing here?" My instinct was to lie, not because I was afraid of her judgment, because being seen felt unbearable. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "We're okay. It's temporary." She didn't respond right away. Her gaze dropped to Ava's mismatched socks. Then to my hands, red, dry, rough from cold, sanitizer, and too many hours holding a life together with no margin for error. Her voice softened, just slightly. "Claire," she said again. "Why aren't you living in your house on Hawthorne Street?" The world tilted. I laughed not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process the sentence fast enough to panic. "My what?" She didn't repeat herself like she thought I was slow. She repeated herself like she thought I might pass out. "The house," she said carefully. "On Hawthorne Street." My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my throat. "I don't have a house," I said. For the first time in my life, my grandmother looked genuinely unsettled. Behind her eyes, I could see calculations firing. Timelines, possibilities, lies rearranging themselves. Ava tugged at my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered. "Do we have a house?" I knelt in front of her, forcing my voice steady. "No, sweetheart, we don't." Eleanor went very still, and when my grandmother went still, something was about to break. She stepped past me and crouched in front of Ava. This alone was shocking. Eleanor Whitmore did not crouch. She sat in chairs that cost more than my monthly income and made rooms adjust around her. "You must be Ava," she said gently. Ava nodded. "That's a beautiful name." Then Eleanor stood, her gaze snapping back to me, sharp as glass. "Get in the car." I blinked. "Grandma, get in the car," she repeated. "No room for discussion. No space for pride." Ava looked up at me. "It's okay, Mom," she said quietly. The fact that my 6-year-old was comforting me was the final crack. I nodded. We got in. The inside of the car smelled like leather and calm. The kind of calm you forget exists when your life has been reduced to survival math. Eleanor didn't drive right away. She stared straight ahead, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. Then she spoke. "By tonight," she said calmly, "I will know who did this." My stomach dropped. "I don't understand," I whispered. "No," she said. "You don't, and that tells me everything." She pulled out her phone. "Call Daniel," she said. "I want the property manager for Hawthorne Street on the line. I need to know who has the keys, who's living there, and whether anyone has been collecting money." Money. The word made my blood run cold. As the car pulled away from the shelter, it finally hit me. I hadn't just lost my home, someone had taken it, and the people who were supposed to protect me knew exactly where it was. The first time I realized my parents were capable of cruelty, it wasn't during a screaming argument. It was in silence, quiet, polite, carefully arranged, like cruelty was just another household rule you weren't supposed to question. As my grandmother's car merged into traffic, her phone still pressed to her ear, my mind slipped backward through time, replaying the moment everything started to rot. Because none of this began at a shelter. It began the day I moved back in with my parents. Back then, I still had a routine. 12-hour shifts as a nursing assistant at a regional medical center. Call lights blinking like slot machines. Patients asking for things I didn't have answers. Time. Certainty. I came home exhausted but upright. Tired, but functional. Then childcare collapsed. Rent went up. My savings went down. Survival turned into a math problem I couldn't solve fast enough. My mother offered help the way a spider offers a web. "You can stay with us," she said, hands folded neatly on the kitchen table, voice gentle enough to sound holy. "Just until you get back on your feet. Ava needs stability. Family supports family." I should have heard the fine print hiding inside that sentence. I didn't. I was too tired. Too relieved. Too desperate to believe the word family still meant safety. At first, it was tolerable. Their condo was small, but it was familiar. I squeezed my life into my childhood bedroom. Ava slept in the twin bed I'd outgrown years ago, still decorated with faint sticker residue from a decade earlier. I worked. I paid what I could. I cleaned up after myself like a guest who didn't want to be noticed. Then the comments started. Not obvious insults. Not the kind of cruelty you could explain to someone and have them instantly agree it was wrong. The subtle kind. The kind that makes you question your instincts. "You're always tired," my mother would say lightly, as if fatigue were a moral failure. "Maybe if you organized your life better," my father would sigh loudly when Ava's toys spilled across the rug. "We're just trying to keep the place nice," he'd say, like my child was a stain. Little cuts. Daily. Measured. Never enough blood to prove anything. Then one night, after a double shift that left my feet numb and my head buzzing, my mother sat at the kitchen table like she was about to deliver a diagnosis. "We need to talk," she said. That tone, calm, certain. My stomach tightened. "Okay." She folded her hands. "We think it's time you became independent." I blinked. Still in scrubs. Still smelling like antiseptic and old coffee. "I'm trying." "You've been here long enough," she said softly. "You're a mother. If you're a good mother, you'll figure it out." The words hit me so hard I actually looked around, like someone else must have said them. My father cleared his throat. 30 days. That's reasonable. We're not monsters. 30 days. It wasn't the deadline that broke me. It was the calmness. The way they spoke like they were doing me a favor. Like I should thank them for giving me an expiration date. I didn't scream. Screaming never helped in that house. Screaming gave them evidence. Screaming made me unstable. So I nodded, okay, and I tried. I searched listings during my breaks at work, thumb scrolling while gulping cafeteria coffee. Every place wanted first and last month's rent, deposits, credit checks, proof of income that didn't wobble. Sorry, they said. We chose another applicant. Every day felt like running uphill with Ava on my back. Then came the night my parents decided 30 days was just a suggestion. I came home after midnight. The hallway light outside their condo door was on. My stomach tightened immediately. 2 cardboard boxes sat outside. My boxes. I stared at them, brain refusing to accept the shape of what I was seeing. Then I grabbed the doorknob. Locked. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Finally, the door cracked open. My mother appeared first, calm as if this were normal. You need to keep your voice down, she whispered sharply. Neighbors, why are my things outside? I asked. My father's voice floated from behind her, bored. We told you, Claire, independence. It hasn't been 30 days, I said, my voice shaking. My mother's expression hardened just enough to show the truth underneath. Plans change. I looked past her shoulder. Ava was curled up on the floor beside the shoe rack. On the floor. Her jacket was folded under her head like a pillow. Her shoes were still on. Her cheeks were flushed with sleep, like they'd placed her there hours earlier so I could scoop her up and disappear without waking anyone. Something broke in my chest. Where are we supposed to go? I whispered. My mother smiled thinly. You'll figure it out. You always do. Then, like she was doing me a favor, she added, Don't make a scene. The door started to close. I stepped inside just long enough to crouch beside Ava. Baby, I whispered. She made a sleepy sound and automatically wrapped her arms around my neck as I lifted her. The door closed softly behind us. Not a slam. Just final. I loaded the boxes into my car like a machine. My hands shook so badly I dropped one and glass shattered on the pavement. I didn't stop to pick it up. I drove. I don't remember most of that night. I remember streetlights stretching into yellow lines. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. I remember crawling into the back seat beside Ava in a quiet parking lot and staring at the ceiling of the car. I remember thinking, over and over, how did this happen? By day 3, the money ran out. I tried a motel. 1 night. 2 nights. Then the school counselor asked questions. Gentle ones. I lied. Then she asked again, and I saw Ava watching me, learning from my face how to lie to survive. So I told the truth. 2 days later, I was filling out shelter intake forms while Ava swung her legs beside me and whispered, Is this our house now? The intake worker flinched. I smiled too hard. No, sweetheart, no. That night, Ava fell asleep beside me in a narrow bed that smelled like bleach and overcooked food. I lay awake listening to other families through thin walls, babies crying, coughing, someone whispering, It's okay. Like prayer. My phone was in my hand. I thought about calling my grandmother. Eleanor Whitmore wasn't the kind of woman you called to cry. She was the kind you called when you needed a problem solved. But my mother had trained me not to. Your grandmother hates drama, she used to say. She doesn't like weakness. Don't embarrass yourself. After the lockout, when I texted my mother asking if Eleanor knew what was happening, she replied instantly. Grandma is overseas. She's busy. Don't drag her into this. So I didn't call. I told myself I could handle it. And then, on a freezing morning outside a shelter, my grandmother stepped out of a black sedan and asked me why I wasn't living in my house. Back in the present, Eleanor ended her call and glanced at me. Occupied, she said calmly. The word didn't make sense. Someone is living there? I asked. She didn't answer the question I asked. Someone has been managing it without you, she said. That was when I understood. This wasn't neglect. It was theft. And the people who taught me what family meant had been rewriting the definition the entire time. The most dangerous lies don't sound like lies. They sound reasonable. They sound loving. They sound like family. I understood that fully for the first time as my grandmother drove us away from the shelter, her voice calm on the phone while my entire understanding of my parents quietly collapsed in the back seat. Ava leaned against me, humming softly, swinging her legs like this was an adventure instead of the unraveling of everything I thought I knew. Her stomach growled loudly enough that she giggled, then covered her mouth, embarrassed. I kissed the top of her head and stared out the window, my thoughts racing backward and forward at the same time. Because if someone was living in a house meant for us, it meant this hadn't been an accident. It had been managed. Eleanor ended the call and slipped her phone back into her coat pocket like she'd just confirmed a reservation. "We're going to a diner," she said. "A diner?" I repeated, my brain lagging behind reality. "You need food," she replied, "and I need you awake." Ava perked up instantly. "Pancakes?" "Yes," Eleanor said. Pancakes. The diner was 10 minutes away, glowing warm and yellow against the cold like a promise. The heater blasted my face the second we stepped inside, and my eyes stung not from the heat, but from the shock of being warm without earning it. We slid into a booth. Ava immediately grabbed the kids' menu and started coloring with the seriousness of someone tasked with saving civilization. Eleanor watched her quietly for a moment. Then she lifted her phone again. "Now," she said to me, not unkindly. "You're going to listen, and you're not going to interrupt." I nodded. It was the nod you give when you're on an operating table and the surgeon finally looks confident. She put the phone on speaker. 1 ring. 2. Then my mother's voice, bright, cheerful, perfectly rehearsed. "Eleanor." "What a surprise. How are you?" My chest tightened. Eleanor's tone stayed pleasant, almost gentle. "I was thinking about Claire," she said. "How is she doing?" There was a pause, tiny, precise. The moment a liar chooses which version of reality is most useful. "Oh, she's doing great," my mother said smoothly. "She's living in the house. She's settled. She loves it. You know, Claire, she wanted space, so we didn't bother you." The words landed like ice water. I stared at the sticky diner table, my hands trembling under the edge like they were trying to disappear. Across from me, Ava colored harder, humming louder. She didn't understand the words, but she understood tone. She glanced up once, saw my face, and went right back to scribbling like she could draw over the truth. My mother kept talking. Busy schedules, proud parent commentary, family is everything. Eleanor let her, because Eleanor didn't rush liars. She gave them room. Finally, she said, "That's good to hear," and ended the call. Just like that. No confrontation, no accusation, no warning. The silence that followed felt heavier than shouting. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew the whole time." Eleanor met my eyes. "She knew enough to lie without hesitation," she said. "That's all I needed." Ava slid her coloring page toward me. "Mom, look, I made the pancake purple." I forced a smile that felt like it cracked my face. "That pancake is very brave," she giggled, and for a moment just when the knot in my chest loosened. Then Eleanor leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "I arranged a home for you," she said. "On Hawthorne Street. Your parents were supposed to handle the keys, the move-in, all of it. They told me it was done." The world slowed. A house. A real one. Meant for my child. While we slept in a shelter, my fingers tightened on the edge of the booth until my knuckles went white. "Why wouldn't you tell me directly?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Eleanor didn't flinch. "Because I trusted your parents," she said. "That was my mistake, not yours." She stood, already moving. "Finish your food," she said. "You're not going back to the shelter." An hour later, Ava was bouncing on a hotel bed like it was a trampoline, laughing as if the world had never been cruel. She discovered the complimentary soap, sniffed it dramatically, and declared it smelled like rich lady flowers. I laughed despite myself, then turned away so she wouldn't see the tears burn my eyes. Eleanor stood by the window, phone in hand, watching traffic like a general studying a battlefield. That night, after Ava fell asleep in clean sheets with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, Eleanor finally spoke again. Your parents are hosting an event, she said. My stomach dropped. What kind of event? The kind your mother enjoys, she replied. Public, performative, with witnesses. I knew exactly what she meant. When? I asked. Soon, she said, and we'll be there. She didn't say it like a threat. She said it like a conclusion. The next 2 days were unnervingly quiet. No messages, no guilt, no concern. My parents thought they'd won. Eleanor moved efficiently, quiet calls, short sentences, people who answered immediately. She never raised her voice. She never repeated herself. On the 3rd morning, she handed me a garment bag. You'll wear this, she said. I hesitated. I don't want to look like I'm trying to. You don't need armor, she interrupted. You need dignity. Ava twirled in her blue dress when I helped her get ready. I look like a princess, she announced. You do, I said, my throat tightening, and in that moment, I realized something sharp and painful. My parents had never seen her that way. On the drive to the event, my stomach twisted violently. What if I freeze? I asked quietly. Then I'll speak, Eleanor said. What if they deny everything? They will. What if everyone thinks I'm the problem? Eleanor finally looked at me, her gaze steady and unyielding. Claire, she said, you survived being erased. A room full of liars won't finish you. The venue glowed with soft lighting and expensive smiles. The sign outside read, Whitmore Family Dinner. Of course it did. Before entering, Eleanor stopped beside a side door and spoke quietly to a staff member. A small private room opened, warm, quiet, stocked with snacks. This is for Ava, she said. She doesn't need to be in the middle of this. Ava accepted this arrangement like it was legally binding. Then Eleanor turned to me. You go in first. I understood immediately. Let them see me. Let the panic bloom in silence. I walked into the room alone, and everything changed. The room didn't go quiet when I walked in. It hesitated. Conversation softened, then resumed too quickly, too loudly, the way people do when they sense something dangerous but don't want to be the first to acknowledge it. Relatives I hadn't seen in months stood in small, polished clusters. Aunts with fixed smiles. Cousins holding drinks they hadn't tasted. People who knew just enough to be curious, but not enough to be brave. Then my mother saw me. Her smile appeared automatically, and then glitched. Just for a fraction of a second, her eyes flicked over my dress, my posture, the absence of visible desperation. Her hand tightened around her wine glass like it had betrayed her. My father noticed a heartbeat later. His laugh died mid-sentence. His jaw clenched. Neither of them came toward me. They didn't ask where I'd been. They didn't ask how Ava was. They did what people do when they're calculating risk. They smiled and waited. I stood near the edge of the room and let the silence stretch. Dry humor floated through my mind like a life raft. Look at us, I thought. A family dinner, the kind where everyone pretends the seating arrangement matters more than the truth. Then, the temperature shifted. Not literally, but emotionally. People straightened. Smiles faltered. Someone cleared their throat. Eleanor entered, calm, unhurried, entirely in control. Beside her walked a man carrying a slim folder and a laptop bag, the kind of person who didn't raise his voice because he didn't need to. My mother went pale. Not surprised, pale, cornered pale. My father straightened his shoulders, preparing the posture he always used when he wanted to look like the reasonable one. Eleanor nodded politely to a few relatives, as if she were simply attending dinner. Then she looked at my mother. Before we eat, Eleanor said lightly, I'd like to clarify something you told me. My mother laughed too fast. Of course. You told me Claire was living in the house on Hawthorne Street. The room didn't go silent because people cared about Hawthorne Street. It went silent because everyone cared about my mother's face. Well, my mother said, scrambling. Yes, Eleanor raised a hand. Let's not guess, she said calmly. Let's use facts. She nodded to the man beside her. He stepped forward, connected his laptop to the projector with practiced ease. The first slide appeared, Hawthorne Street Property Summary. A murmur rippled through the room. My mother's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Eleanor spoke like she was reading the weather. This home was arranged for my granddaughter and her child. Next slide. Key release log signed by my mother's name. July. Eleanor let it sit. Next slide. A rental listing. Photos of a furnished living room. A kitchen. A bedroom. People leaned forward. Next slide. Lease summary tenants. Moved in August. Then the slide that sucked the air from the room. Rent payout account provided by my parents. Silence. Absolute. Eleanor's voice never rose. You didn't just take the keys, she said. You rented out the home meant for my granddaughter and my great-granddaughter, and you had the rent sent to an account you controlled. My father snapped first. This is inappropriate, he barked. This is a family event. Eleanor turned to him, calm as stone. Yes, she said. That's why I'm doing it here. My mother's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled, messy and real. We had debts, she cried. You don't understand. I understand enough, Eleanor replied. And I'm done funding your choices. She turned slightly so everyone could hear. Effective immediately, she said. You receive nothing further from me. No assistance, no transfers, no inheritance. My father's face twisted. You can't. I can, Eleanor said. And I already did. The man with the folder stepped forward. These documents are for you, he said politely. A uniformed officer stood nearby, not aggressive, just present, because Eleanor didn't gamble with scenes like this. My mother stared at the papers like they were radioactive. My father finally looked around the room and understood the worst part. This wasn't a fight. It was a reputation collapsing in public. My mother turned to me, eyes wild. Claire, she pleaded, tell her to stop. We're family. Something inside me went cold and clear. You should have remembered that, I said quietly, before you made a business out of my daughter's home. The words landed harder than I expected. I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. Relief that I wasn't crazy. Relief that the truth was finally loud. Relief that Ava would never have to learn how to smile through humiliation the way I had. I didn't stay for the aftermath. I walked down the hallway, past muffled voices and shattered illusions, and opened the door to the private room. Ava looked up, cheeks full of crackers. Mom, she asked, studying my face carefully. Are we done? I knelt and hugged her so tightly she squeaked. Yes, I whispered. We're done. She leaned back, serious. Can we go home? I swallowed hard. Yes, I said. We can. Eleanor met us in the hallway. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. In the car, Ava fell asleep against my shoulder almost immediately. I stared out the window, my hands trembling. What happens now? I asked quietly. Eleanor kept her eyes on the road. Now, she said, we take back what was meant for you. The house didn't feel real the first time I saw it. We turned onto Hawthorne Street just after noon, the neighborhood quiet in that weekday way that suggested stability. People at work, children at school, lawns trimmed because someone had time to trim them. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From disbelief, Eleanor parked at the curb and turned off the engine. There it is, she said simply. I stared through the windshield. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't dramatic. It was a modest two-story home with pale siding, a small porch, and a tree out front that had dropped most of its leaves but stubbornly kept a few like it, refused to let go of hope entirely. Ava leaned forward between the seats. Is this ours? Yes, Eleanor said. Ava went very still. Then she whispered, Really? I swallowed hard. Yes, baby. Really? She unbuckled before I could stop her and stepped onto the sidewalk like she wasn't sure she was allowed to exist there. I followed, my legs weak, my chest tight. The front door was locked. Eleanor handed me the keys. Not ceremoniously, not dramatically, just placed them in my palm, warm from her hand. You should be the one, she said. The metal felt heavier than it should have. I slid the key into the lock and turned it. The door opened. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and emptiness, not abandonment. Preparation. It was furnished but untouched. Neutral couch. Simple dining table. Beds made but never slept in. Like it had been holding its breath, Ava stepped inside slowly. Then she ran. She ran through the living room, down the hallway, up the stairs, laughing as her footsteps echoed. "Mom, there's a room with a window seat. Mom, there's a closet bigger than my whole life." I laughed, a real laugh, surprised by the sound of it. Eleanor stayed near the doorway, watching quietly. "You don't have to stay," I said, suddenly aware of how much space she occupied just by standing there. "I know," she replied. "I'm not." Ava came racing back down the stairs. "Which room is mine?" I crouched to her level. "Which one do you want?" She thought carefully, then pointed upstairs. "The one with the window seat, so I can read and look out like kids in movies." "Then it's yours," I said. She squealed and ran back up. Eleanor spoke behind me. "The tenants vacated this morning," she said. "The rest will be handled." I didn't ask what the rest meant. I didn't need details. "What about my parents?" I asked. "They'll repay every dollar," Eleanor said. "There's an investigation, and they've been instructed not to contact you." Something settled in my chest, not joy, not revenge. Finality. "Thank you," I said. Eleanor inclined her head. "This was never about gratitude." She paused. "It was about correction." That night, Ava slept in her own bed for the first time in months. I sat on the floor beside her, my back against the wall, listening to the quiet. No footsteps in hallways, no whispered reassurances through thin walls, no fear of being asked to leave, just silence that didn't threaten. I cried quietly, releasing everything I'd been holding together with exhaustion and denial. The weeks that followed unfolded slowly, deliberately. Ava walked to school holding my hand, then eventually letting go. The fridge filled with drawings and mismatched magnets. The house gained a smell that wasn't cleaner or emptiness, but life. Margaret, no. Eleanor visited on Sundays with pastries and insisted she was just stopping by. Ava didn't buy it. "Do you like our house?" she asked one morning, crumbs on her chin. Eleanor paused. "Yes," she said. "I do." Behind the scenes, consequences landed where they belonged. My parents weren't punished. They were exposed. Once Eleanor cut them off financially, their hidden debts surfaced fast. Invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. Their image, the one they'd protected so carefully, collapsed under the weight of truth. My mother tried to contact me, not to apologize, to negotiate. I blocked the number, because I was done bargaining for basic decency. One evening, as Ava drew with chalk on the sidewalk, I realized something that startled me with its simplicity. I wasn't bracing for the next disaster. I was planning. I enrolled in the RN program I'd postponed for years. Not because I was trapped, but because I finally had the energy to move forward instead of just survive. The house didn't fix everything, but it gave us something essential. A place where help couldn't be intercepted. Where safety didn't require permission. Where my daughter learned what stability looked like. Some people say what Eleanor did was cruel. Others say it was justice. Here's what I know now. Cruelty thrives in private. Truth needs witnesses. If it had been handled quietly, the lie would have survived, reshaped, softened, repackaged. My parents would have found a way back in with conditions. Public truth ended the cycle. Ava will never wonder if she imagined being unwanted. She will never sleep in shoes. She will never confuse love with leverage. 6 months after the worst year of my life, my biggest problem was deciding whether we were out of milk. I stood barefoot in the kitchen on Hawthorne Street, sunlight on the counter, Ava humming off key at the table. Boring, beautifully boring. And if you're listening to this thinking, that could never happen to me, I used to think that too. Awareness protects what arrogance never will. So I'll ask you quietly, honestly, do you think Eleanor did the right thing? Comment 0 if you believe she was justified. Comment 1 if you think she went too far. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you angry, relieved, or simply seen, stay. Not for drama, for truth, because sometimes the most powerful ending is a life that finally gets to be boring.